Okay, we are live. Alright, first I have to thank you for agreeing to this interview, which is taking place on 2/5/17. Weldon's and Jerry Courtney present. Alright, I'd just like to start out with getting some of your basic biographical information, like your birth date, full name, and where you were born.
You said birthday?
Yeah, let's start there.
February 13, 1922.
Happy early birthday. Full name?
Albert Gallatin Craig, and Jr. is what they called me when I was a kid. Albert G. Craig Jr. Albert Gallatin Craig Jr.
Okay. Place of birth?
In Gallatin County, Kentucky, in the farmhouse my great-grandpa built.
Really?
What part of the county was that in?
That's in the, well, it's just a mile or so from the Carroll County line.
Okay.
Montgomery Road is a dividing line between the Craig Farm and the Myler Farm.
Alright. Why were you named after Albert Gallatin?
Well, my daddy was named after Albert Gallatin, which was his grandfather. And there must have been another 100 or so Albert Gallatin Craigs in the country. And my daddy, my grandpa was Virginia Craig, and he had a brother, Albert Gallatin Craig, named for the father, my great-grandfather. So there are a lot of Albert Gallatin Craigs. There was one time one of my dad's first cousins was Albert Gallatin Craig, but he had his family put Lee in there. Albert Gallatin Lee Craig.
Let me clarify here. So you're Albert Gallatin Craig Jr. Your father was Albert Gallatin Craig.
Right.
His father's name was what?
Virginius. Virginius Stockmorton.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you said there were more Albert Gallatin Craigs farther back. So really you're
my
more
great-grandfather.
So you're really more than a junior. Okay. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
So kind of a...
And there are other Albert Gallatin Craigs in my daddy's and my grandpa's generation both. But they moved on to Missouri. My great-grandfather moved to Missouri and left the farm in Kentucky with my grandfather.
Were they named that because the county was named that?
I don't know which one was named first, but they're both named for Albert Gallatin.
For Albert Gallatin, okay.
So
Secretary of the Treasury or something like that, involved with the Mexican War.
So it kind of turned into a family tradition, I guess?
I'm not sure it's just family tradition. I think it was just tradition generally.
Understood.
You know.
Alright, can you tell me more about your family real quick? Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Well, I had two brothers and one sister. One brother was born before I was born, and died before I was born, actually. And I'm not sure just what, I think he was something like 18 months old when he died.
I'll tell you.
He and my cousin Bob Alford were about the same age.
Okay.
Well, Bobby Alford, we called him. Let's say he died before I was born, and and my brother came along in November of 24, I guess it was, and my sister in December of 29.
Who were your parents?
Albert Gallatin Craig Sr.
And the mother?
Jenny Lee Hance Craig.
Do you have any memorable experiences from your childhood you'd like to share?
Well, there's some memories that I don't know whether it's an interesting type of share or not, but
I'm all ears.
my mother taught me things that that stayed with me, and some of it hindered me all my life. I mean, one of the first things she told me was that I was not to speak to somebody who hadn't spoken to me first. So if they want to talk to you, they'll speak to them. They'll not let you know that they want to talk to you. So, and my memory of a basketball game in New Liberty, Kentucky was that when I was a substitute in the basketball team, and the referee and the coach told me to make sure to report to the referee, I guess you call him. And I got up and went up and stood there looking at him. He wasn't speaking to me, and I wasn't speaking to him. And I could not speak to him because he hadn't spoken to me first. And so I got charged with a foul, a technical foul. The game went on. And that concept really stayed with me all my life.
Interesting. What? I mean, Doris was your mother's sister, is that correct?
Yeah.
And I know Doris, and it's a family of talkers. So why do you think your mother would have said that to you?
Just warned me about these girls, I guess.
Oh.
I don't know what else.
Okay. Was she a talker, or was she quiet?
Well, I think Mother was quiet because I don't think she had much opportunity to talk.
Okay.
No, this is a, you know, I was born in a house that was built by my great-grandfather. And in that house, the most eldest person was my grandpa's sister, Laura Craig, that never got married. But so I was born with there was one senior lady in the house. And the next senior lady was my grandmother, who was Carrie Gaines Craig. And then I'm not sure, my dad had two sisters in the house when I was still young, Marjorie Craig, who never married, and Ella Craig, who finally married a fellow from Owen County. And I tell people, and this is the truth, that I once found my mother crying. And I asked her what the problem was, and she said, I never had a home of my own. She had a great aunt, my grandma, at least my Aunt Marjorie, who never married and stayed there, she died. Three senior women in the house, with Mother being the fourth one maybe. And so she never had any real say about anything.
And she grew up in a home with 8 sisters, was that right?
There was 8 girls altogether.
Yeah.
Doris was the youngest, and Mother was the oldest.
Okay. Can you say a little bit about, the Craigs are one of the oldest names in the county, am I correct?
Yes, I think so.
Do you know anything about the first Craigs that came or anything?
I think the first Craig that hit this area was my great-great-great-grandfather, Benjamin. There's a highway sign. He's buried right off 42 down here as you come into Carrollton. There's a highway sign there. He was one that purchased the area here where the Kentucky River runs into the Ohio, and laid out the city of Carrollton. And they donated 3 lots, I guess it was, to the city. One was for the courthouse, and the other was for the high school. and I don't know what the third one was for. But, that's Benjamin Craig, and it was been in the early 1980s.
In the
No, early 1780s.
1780s. And at that point, was Carrollton all part of Gallatin County?
My understanding is that it was part of Gallatin
That's what I
County.
thought. Okay.
And your friend Barbara Beagle over here was her, Joseph Craig is her ancestor, brother of my ancestor, Benjamin. And they settled in the Warsaw, Sparta area.
Okay. Benjamin's brother, okay.
Benjamin's brother, and Craig's Creek, and all
Right.
that stuff's named for that
That
bunch
part.
of Craigs instead of my bunch of Craigs.
So you and Barbara are cousins somehow.
Yeah, our ancestors are on the tree up there.
Right.
It dates back quite a ways. The Craigs first came into Kentucky in 1781, primarily with the traveling church, which was led by Lewis Craig as a pastor of the traveling church. Included about 700 people in the party, as I understand it. About 300 of them were the church members.
Wow.
And they settled in central Kentucky. A lot of John Craigs, and we lived in Woodford County. There was an old church there that would have been John Craig's church. And so there were three of Taliaferro Craig's sons became what were called separate Baptist ministers. Joseph, Elijah, and Lewis, and Elijah.
So,
Lewis Craig ended up mostly in Mason County, and let's see,
what's a separate Baptist? Just a branch?
well, there was a regular Baptist or General Baptist and separate Baptist, and I don't know.
Just another branch, okay.
I think it was, they were considered Baptist. Lewis Craig had been the pastor of and founding pastor of the Fredericksburg, Virginia Baptist Church before they came into Kentucky, and
Okay, well, I didn't mean to get you off too far. I'll let you go back to you were talking about your mother and your childhood on the farm.
My grandpa had inherited some land in Mississippi. No, not in Mississippi. Up in Missouri, I think it was.
Like Palatine, I think.
Mm,
Palatine, Missouri? I think I saw it in a document. It doesn't matter.
Well, you may know more about that than I
It's
do.
just on a census.
Maryville's the name that comes to mind for me.
So that was your grandfather who got the land in Missouri?
My grandpa had inherited some in Missouri, as I understand it. And he went up there and sold it, sell the land. And the tale is that on the way back to Kentucky with his pocket full of money, somebody suggested to him that he go down to Mississippi and buy some land there where the land was selling for from $2 to $3 an acre. And I'm not sure the deeds all back that story up very well, because some of the deeds were made up to my grandma and some to my grandpa. So we ended up something like 3,000 acres of land in Natchez, Mississippi. And when Dad being the only son, he wanted to go to the engineering college at UK, and he went over and registered in the engineering college. Somebody along the line talked him to change into agriculture. So he went into agriculture, and I guess he got a degree there. And my grandpa wanted pretty much to be certain that he stayed on the farm. All the income from the farm was in Grandpa's name, put in the bank in Grandpa's name. Dad didn't have any money at all. When Grandpa Hance died, Dad wanted to bid on the Hance farm. Grandpa Hance had borrowed about $15,000, I understand it, on the Hance farm. And I think with Frank Conley administering the estate, if I remember right, he and Aunt Brownie talked about Aunt Willie Brown and Uncle Norton were the two with income in the 30s. They're both school teachers, no children at that time. And the farm went on the block and nobody bid for it, so Aunt Brownie got the farm for the debt.
I see.
About $15,000. And
that was your father's sister?
that was my mother's sister.
It's your mother's sister?
Well,
Okay.
Aunt Willie Brown Norton.
Okay, got it.
You know who she
Yes,
is.
yes,
Yeah. Mary Ann Lou's mother.
right.
And Lou was born in 37, I think. And Grandpa has died in 37.
So your aunt bought the farm. This is the family farm up off Montgomery Road
No, this is the Hance farm
in
for Mother and
Steele's Bottom.
Steele's Bottom,
Okay.
where the
And so did they sell it to did she sell it to your father?
no, Dad never was involved with that farm. He wanted to buy it, but Grandpa took all the money out of the bank, and he couldn't even bid on it because he didn't have any money.
It's Grandpa Craig, right?
Grandpa Craig
Okay,
took the money out of the bank,
okay,
left Dad with nothing to write a check on.
okay. So the farm up there was Willie Brown.
And Willie Brown's.
Okay. So, and then your father went to agriculture school,
Yeah.
but your grandfather and your father still lived up here on the Craig farm off Montgomery Road, even though they bought 3,000 acres in Mississippi.
Well, Grandpa and Grandma moved to Mississippi,
Okay.
and Grandma didn't like it down there, and also the house burned, apparently. And so they came back to Kentucky after, I don't know how long they were down there. But Grandpa had actually leased a farm in Kentucky to Dad, and they moved to Mississippi, hoping to stay there, and Dad take care of the Kentucky farm. But it didn't work out. They were soon back in Kentucky and back running the business of the farm again.
I see. So then your father graduated from
University of
Kentucky in
in
agriculture.
agriculture.
And then he went on to do,
He went on, he stayed in the farm all his life.
okay,
Grandpa made sure of it by not letting him buy the Hance farm, which Dad wanted to do, and he and Mother could have moved to the Hance farm then, and things would have been different.
I see. Okay.
So, I think the reason I don't know, guess I ought to bring up high school next.
Go right ahead.
My mother had taught school at Jackson Landing before she and Dad were married, and so she.
Jackson Landing's up in Steele's Bottom.
Yeah. So she she taught me the first grade. And then got in the second grade, Norma Gart became my teacher. And she was my teacher until I graduated from the high school, 12th grade, I guess it is.
And that high school was at Jackson's Landing?
No, the high school.
You're talking about grade school, right? I'm sorry.
She taught in grade, just the first grade she taught me. Well, no. Mother taught in Jackson's Landing before she married Dad.
Okay.
So I didn't come along until after that, you know. And I was at J school when during my pre-high school days, all at J school.
And the J school was where?
If I knew what the names of those factories are up there now.
The steel mills. So when you say J, you're talking about GEX.
GEX, yeah.
J school. Okay. So quickly, the Hans Farm, did your father run that for them or not?
No.
So he stayed, so you were in the first grade, you were up in Steele's Bottom area, but
No.
at Jackson's Landing. And then
No, Mother didn't teach me at Jackson's Landing.
she taught there.
That was just a
I got you. Okay.
before they got married.
Okay, so we're
She
back.
taught there. She went to Eastern Kentucky University. And,
I got you. So you really spent all your youth at this end of the county,
right.
except your family, your mother's side of the family was from Steele's Bottom, the Hanses. I got it.
Got it, yeah.
I'm getting it.
Okay.
Okay, so the J school somewhere.
It was about 2 miles toward Warsaw from the house.
Yes. Okay. So it's where Gallatin Steel is in that area.
It'd be just a little bit closer to Warsaw than Gallatin City.
Okay. Got it. Mhm. So you went there. You went there all through grade school.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I was the only one in the 8th grade.
Really?
There was 2 of us in the 7th grade.
Huh? I won't ask what happened to the other guy. and then you went to high school
In Warsaw.
in Warsaw. That's a pretty good little way to get there.
Well, that's the year that they consolidated all the schools in Gallatin County and took them all to Warsaw.
Okay. So that would have been 1935.
35 or so.
Okay.
34, 35.
Okay. And did they have a bus or how did you?
First transportation I remember was the old Willis automobile, and the driver would come down Montgomery Road.
Mm-hmm.
The kids who lived up on Montgomery Hill had at least a mile, maybe two or 3 miles to walk
To get picked
to
up.
be up US 42 to be picked up. And then they had the same thing, walk back to their homes. But our first transportation, I think, public transportation was a Willis automobile.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know where the Craig's Creek thing is, the entrance into the river there now,
Mm-hmm.
there was a bridge that crosses that inlet.
Right.
And the fellow that drove that Jeep, or the Billis, lived down in a trailer park.
Down in there.
Down in there.
So then you graduated high school in Gallatin County, what, 39?
40.
40.
Okay, so high school in 1935, would that be the old middle school they tore down?
Was it the new high school then?
Was it a new building?
No.
No, it was the one that they built in 1917 or.
Oh, gotcha.
They, it even had a dirt basketball court.
Okay. Because in the, was it early 40s or something, they built what was the new high school until about 10 years ago.
And then it was the middle school.
Just next to the Bun Boy.
Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't that building, it was the previous building. It wasn't a brand new building.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And I can't remember them building the building. That's the thing that kind of bugs me there.
Well, they might have built it after you graduated. I'm not exactly sure. But it was somewhere in that close period. Okay.
When I got into high school, we had a science teacher. And the science teacher promised to buy Coca-Cola for the student that could give the best answer to a question. And the question, as I remember, was something like, what happened, why did you, if you turn on the cold water faucet, why do you get hot water out of it? And so I gave him the answer, you know, the hot water heater hadn't shut down, produced steam, and was forcing the cold water back out the cold water inlet line, forcing the hot water out the cold water line, and eventually getting to the faucets. Well, so I won Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And there's a little store across the 42 there that we could go get drinks. So I wanted to get
Probably where the orange store is.
to get my Coca-Cola, and the fella that was running the place said, "I've got a new drink called Pepsi Cola, and it costs a nickel just like the Coke does, and you get twice as much." So he sold me on the Pepsi, and I got my free Pepsi from the
All right.
science teacher.
And that led to a degree in engineering.
Yeah, sort of.
Sort
of.
Yeah.
I think.
Another aside, was my mother teaching when you were in high school? Because I think that's about the years 38, 39. I think that's about when she was teaching there. You remember?
I don't remember your mother ever teaching there.
Okay, she taught for 2 years at the Gallatin
Aunt
County.
Helen was the only.
I think she taught a little later than that.
Was it early 40s?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, let's see. Bubby Hall was 15 and when? About 37 or 8. Was Bubby in school with you?
I think I was a year ahead of him, and I think it was because our birthdays are both in 22.
Okay.
But I was born and looked for the cutoff line.
Right.
For the,
And the reason I brought that up was
Yeah.
he did that film when he was 15, and Doris was a teacher there, and she was coming out of the high school.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
I knew Aunt Doris taught there. She taught, I think, second grade with Aunt Helen for
Okay.
And that was after I had left there.
Okay.
Elsie Winchester was the principal, I think. And Moulton was the coach.
Okay. Huh. Go ahead.
And
I'm curious, what chores or responsibilities did you have growing up on the farm?
well, my chores, and I was handled a bit different than most of the farm boys. When school started, time came to go to school, my chores ended.
Nice.
You know, most of the guys, if they had a cow to milk, they had to go milk it before they went to school, and I wasn't required to do that. So,
Well, the education was obviously very important to, you know, I mean, your father graduated from college,
yeah,
and which was not a common thing at the time. And so obviously education was very important to them for their children.
I would say yes. And as far as I know, as far as I can remember, Thad Tinsley and I were the only two that went to university anyway. Maybe the only two that went to college out of the class, graduating class, 1940.
Is that Charles's older brother? Was he Charles Tinsley's older brother?
Thad was the younger brother.
Thad was Charles's younger brother. Okay.
Yeah.
And as a point of reference, Thad and Charles Tinsley were Herb Tinsley's children, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Herb
Herb
Tinsley.
Tinsley, who was a state senator from Warsaw and the minister at the Warsaw Christian Church for 33
Is he
years.
a senator or a representative?
Well, he might have been a representative, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know either.
And so
I know he was in the legislature.
he was. And actually, Julian Carroll, 2 years ago, at our bicentennial, said that Mr. Tinsley was his mentor when Julian Carroll's freshman term.
Wow.
And he kind of guided him through the process. And speaking of that, he also was very involved after the 37 flood in getting Red Cross Avenue so that all the people that lived under the hill, they were trying to build new houses up above the hill for all the people that were flooded. So he was very involved in all that, Mr. Tinsley, Reverend Tinsley. So, go ahead.
Thad Tinsley.
Thad Tinsley. You and Thad.
Thad Tinsley. As far as I know, he and I both registered for the university, and I have no idea what part of the university he was in. I never really saw him at school. We were in different circles, I guess. The engineering students always had about twice the load of any other student in the class. Or most of our engineering students carried 20 hours of class and
The semester, yeah.
semester hours of class, and I think 12 hours was more like what most of the arts and science.
And you mentioned your father was initially going into engineering,
Yeah.
and then that's what you chose. Did you both have
I think that my father chose it for me.
I see.
I really do think that, and I think it was because he didn't get to stay in the engineering, or he didn't, he wanted me to.
Yeah, was it a good choice, or
Yeah, I think it was a good choice.
okay, good.
I had to take a couple of courses over again because I flunked chemistry and
Remember, we're recording this.
Hey, that's history, Bob.
That's right. Did you have a knack for tinkering and engineering kind of things growing up?
Well, yeah, my dad could do everything
Okay.
when they.
Good. You want to have a seat?
No, I'm here with somebody else.
Is that Bill coming?
Yeah.
Just came to say hello.
So, okay, so then you went on to UK and go from there. Sorry.
Why don't you go back to the flood?
Okay, let's go back to the flood for a moment, maybe.
Okay. I don't know how to describe the thing, but the river was over here. Kind of went down, there's kind of a little hump there, and then you went to the lower place, and then it started up inclining, and the water had never gotten up to the top of the house was on the upper area, and I can remember when we went to bed that the water was right close to, the house was built facing the river.
Okay, but it was on
And
the south side of 42, is that correct or not?
no,
No, it's the north
No,
side.
no.
It's the Craig house.
It's the
yeah,
it's the old Craig house is where you grew up.
yeah,
Yeah.
All right, because I was thinking on Montgomery Road. That's where I got confused.
okay,
So the Craig house, which is right across from Gallatin Steel almost, yes.
yeah, Gallatin Steel just a little built on that.
And it's very close to the J house, right?
That's right.
Yes. Okay, so go ahead. The river got up right close to the house?
Okay, the water was right at the Highway 42. The driveway came in from 42 between the house and the barns, and then curved around and front of the house, which the front was on the river side of the house, facing the river.
I remember the porches.
And, yeah, and the water was just about up to the driveway where it went in front of the house and I went to bed. And then sometimes toward daylight, people were moving around in the house and you could hear the water running in the basement and going through the windows, basement windows down into the cellar. And I can't remember exactly how things happened from there, but when they got me out of bed, the dad had decided that he'd try to go up to the J house. It was a little bit higher level than the Craig house. And Dad put me on the wagon to drive a wagon and told me very distinctly that when you get out to 42, the river highway, you turn left to that wagon and you look at the dry land up ahead and you head directly for that dry land. And that was the advice that saved me, I guess, because my mother was on the wagon with me and she was telling me to go this way.
Because part of the road is covered with water.
The road was covered with water, and the ripples on the road made you seem like you were going to run off the road or whatever. But Dad said you just point toward the dry land. You head for that.
And he stayed back.
No,
He's still at the house.
Must have been because he wasn't with me. Mother was with me.
Now,
She was telling me I was going to run off the road, and I kept telling her. Dad told me just to go point toward that and go out and go that way.
and I'm just going to say the J house still stands. It's the brick house across from Gallatin Steel's, the red brick house, probably what, 1840s house.
That's the one that's in
The
town.
Craig house, which is just a little bit west where Al grew up, was that also 1840s?
Mm-hmm.
1840s home that was there until Gallatin Steel bought that property and then it was torn down.
It was torn down.
Now, the other question I have is, what is your estimate of the amount of land from your front door, on the riverside there, the front door, to the river when it was in its regular stage? It was quite a distance. Half mile?
Oh no.
Not that much,
No.
third of a mile? It was a big field, and so the river...
It was, I really don't know, Bob.
Okay. But I remember that, and what I'm trying to do is let you know how high
We had
this
the
water came.
barn was up to the level of the house, and then there was a hay field that was fairly good size, went down to where the lower dip was, and then it went up a little bit and into the river.
Right. So it was a lot of bottom land down there. It was quite a distance from the river, its normal stage, up to their front porch. It was
It was a distance, but it wasn't a big height.
right, and that's why when
was
when
like
it
a
flooded,
shelf.
it came so far. Yes. Okay. So you can continue, and you're about 15 years old then.
I guess so.
Yeah. Okay.
About 15 years old.
Well, 14 because it was January. Almost 15.
You know.
And then
Well, from my dad and mother ended up staying at the J house. J house had a stairway, which was called a back stairway or something. It was probably built. The stairway was probably put in for the servants to use, because it went from a bedroom upstairs, the landing on partway down, and then down to the kitchen area. And there was a hog that spent his life on that little
Ledge?
landing, I think we call them, on that landing, while Mother and Dad were living in the house.
The hog was there during the flood, because it had no place
The
else.
hog was there during the flood on that landing on the back stairway.
Mm.
And Mom and Dad stayed there during the flood. The three of us kids were sent to Aunt Dixie's house, the Froman's house, Rob Froman's house. And we spent the flood at the Aunt Dixie's house.
That house was taken by a steel mill also.
Aunt Dixie's house was taken by Kentucky Utilities.
By Kentucky Utilities,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Dad made arrangements with the people that owned the ferry in Gent to come up to try to rescue some of the cows. And at the J house there was a barn on the other side of the road 42 from the J house. And they cut a hole in the side of that barn and stacked up some bale hay or something like that and got some of the cows up onto the ferry boat, parked, and the ferry boat went down US 42 right to Montgomery Road. And that's where where the water quit, was at Montgomery Road. And so they saved some of the cows that way.
Were the cows on the first level of the barn or second level?
This barn I don't think had but just one level.
The one, okay.
I like the imagery of a ferry boat carrying cows down 42.
Yeah, isn't that something?
But
What were the J's names that lived, what was,
There's Aunt.
all right,
just,
we called him Uncle Had, but I think his name was, I'm not really sure. Let's see,
And your aunt was married to him, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but she was the oldest of the V.T. Craig children.
Right.
His name was Corinne.
Right.
And their son was named Louis Edward, but I don't know whether Uncle Had was, can't remember now whether he was Louis Edward or somebody else. We used to refer to that house as Cousin Lucian's house, but Lucian J. owned it.
Lucian J. Craig's first wife, who died in childbirth, is in the old cemetery in Warsaw. Because I researched her. She was one of the graves we restored.
did you hear what she said?
Not exactly,
In the old Warsaw Cemetery,
yeah, the old cemetery.
Lucian Craig's,
Lucian J.
Lucian J's first wife,
who was actually a Ritchie, Ruth Ritchie. She died in childbirth, or shortly thereafter, she and her daughter, and they're buried up there. And then he came and bought the land down here, or more land down here, because his family was already here, and remarried and had another family.
Craig.
No, Lucian J.
Lucian J.
Okay,
That was Cousin Lucian's house. And that's where the little scrimmage of between the north and the south took place.
Right.
okay. I didn't know that.
The
Okay.
Any further flood questions you'd like to ask?
Anything else about the flood?
well, I remember seeing a cow hanging from down closer to the river from the house in the barn, hanging from one of his legs, got caught up in the branch of the tree, and of course he was dead and hanging there.
Were people terrified?
I don't think they're terrified. I wouldn't think, there's no terror, I didn't see any terror.
I mean, well, just did they? I mean, nothing like this had ever been seen. So
No.
that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to stop, or you know?
No, I don't, No, I don't remember anybody feeling fear. We had my grandpa had a trotting horse that was named Manning, and there was on the opposite side of the house from the barn was a place they called Manning's Stable. It was a 2-story wooden building, and Mother had gotten her chickens up on the 2nd floor of that building, and then it floated away and was caught in some of the trees downriver, and Mother got her chickens back.
Did it nearly destroy your home? I mean, inside?
The house was built all of brick. The inside walls were brick walls, and they were under the water for quite some time and soaked up a lot of moisture. So it took just years for everything to dry out.
Did it get to the 2nd floor?
No, they didn't get to the 2nd floor. We had one of these big old grand piano things in the parlor, and the books had been put on top of the piano, and the piano floated and tilted, and the books all fell off into the water. So they were destroyed, and the piano was destroyed. We had a cousin from Crittenden named Jenny Finley that was Grandpa's cousin that had come to the Craig house to die, really. She stayed there until she died. And I can't remember just how this fit into the flood, except that she had an identical grand piano, which was brought from Crittenden to the house.
After.
Replaced the piano in the parlor.
Did your mother play?
No, not like Doris.
Right.
The Craig house had, right near the house was a maybe 8-sided building, brick building, that we called the old kitchen. The kitchen was not built as a part of the house when the house was built. And then a little space, and then a brick building that had 3 rooms in it. The middle room of those 3 had a dirt floor, and that was used to smoke the hams and cure them, hang them up, smoke them, put them in the salt. The room near the house we called the storeroom. That had, Albert G. Craig, the first one, the one that built the house, was a practicing lawyer. I don't know whether he had a law degree or learned his law from working in a law office somewhere or other. But he somehow or another got onto the mailing list for the Congressional Record. And the storeroom was just full of these books that came in every year with the Congressional Record. And they were all destroyed too with the water.
It's for you if you want something.
The middle room was the smokehouse, and the room on the end was we call Richmond's room. Richmond had been a colored boy that my great-grandpa had bought to help his wife with the house chores. And when the war between the states settled the slavery question, my great-grandma went to tell him that he was free. And he said, "Well, I'm yours." no place for me to go or anything like that, so he stayed on until he died as a, I guess, a helper around the farm. And Dad said he'd take the riverboat to we had a Craig's Landing too on the river. The riverboat would stop if need be. Dad did ship hogs to Cincinnati on the riverboat, and Richmond, when Dad was a child, would take the boat up to Cincinnati, around from Madison, I think, to Cincinnati and back, and bring some hard caddies home to Chicago. Richmond was supposed to have been quite a dancer, and he was dancing, accepting coins that were tossed at him in gent, and somebody reminded him it was Sunday, and he quit dancing right then and there.
Yeah, no dancing on Sunday.
No dancing on Sunday.
Al, I think you once said that somebody was at the Steel House, some house, it was a Sears house and was delivered via the river. Did you say that?
Say that again.
That you once said that you saw a house, a Sears house, that came down river to Steele's Bottom?
I did mention that sometime or other in the past that I was in the carpool with a fellow who lived in a Sears house.
Okay.
That at work. That was in the D.C. area.
Well, someone said that because this, is it Boyd Steel?
Boyd
Steel, there's a Sears house in Steele's Bottom. It was
Yes,
Boyd's, and that it came to there, not via railroad like they
Oh.
usually did, but via the
Oh,
river.
really?
Via the river. That it came down from Cincinnati.
Intentionally or what?
Intentionally,
It
yeah. It
wasn't
was delivered via river rather than
Uh-huh.
train, because, so many of them
I
were.
don't think I knew anything about that.
So they were still shipping, not when you were a child, that was when your grandfather, okay, by
Well,
boat, the hogs to Cincinnati.
No, I can remember when I was,
Really?
at least one time when Dad had the boat stop and pick up some hogs to take to
Okay.
Cincinnati.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Ready to move on?
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving up a few years to Pearl Harbor. It's one of the defining ones of your generation. Where were you? What do you remember?
Oh, I was about halfway through the engineering school at University of Kentucky when we got the word about Pearl Harbor. And since University of Kentucky was a land-grant college, all males had to take some military training. And I'm not sure now whether it was just one semester or 2 semesters that was required, but anyway, at least 1 semester. And I didn't want to be a military man, so I didn't fill out an application to take the advanced training. It was the 2nd year, I suppose it was. And got a call from the fellow that was running the military man that was running the military training at UK. They come to his office. I went to his office, and he said I was the only one in the freshman class that had not signed up for the advanced, and he wanted everybody to sign up. And he promised me that if I'd fill out the papers that he wouldn't select me. I filled out the papers to make him happy, and never heard any more about that. But then when the Pearl Harbor thing happened, all the boys were, something's gonna happen here. And they advised me and others that we should join the enlisted reserve corps. To do that would take us off of the the county's draft board selection list, and so I think that that's what I did, and it seemed to me like Thad Tinsley was on that list too. That he and I had our names on the courthouse in Warsaw as being military people when we were still going to school. That upset some Gallatin County people. That I was still a student in school in the UK, and I wasn't subject to the draft anymore. That they told us that we'd probably get at least one more semester in school that way by joining the enlisted reserve corps. And it worked out that way. Got noticed near the end of one semester that there's no need to sign up for classes for the next semester because you're going to be on active duty before the next semester would be finished. So went back to the farm and loafed around for a few weeks, and I got noticed to report to Fort Thomas, I guess it is, up Cincinnati area. So packed my bag, and I guess they must have told us what clothing to bring or whatever. But I added one thing to it. I took a guitar with me. I went out to 42 and flagged down the Greyhound bus going to Cincinnati and climbed aboard. These drivers all seemed to know just what to do, where to drop me off and so forth. That I'd be picked up with an Army truck. So I took my guitar with me, and we went on to Cincinnati area, Fort Thomas, I guess it was. And I can't remember all we went through there, but we got, one of the first things they did was to check our health, including venereal disease. That was an important thing that they checked. They issued us the Army clothing at that time, and there was an interview about kind of a history type thing, and so I told them I was a student at the university in mechanical engineering, and so they decided to send me to basic training in the Army Engineers, which was at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. And Fort Belvoir was right near Mount Vernon, and so that's where I ended up from that.
Real quickly, when was this, like, the year?
I think it was 43,
Okay.
if that's when Pearl Harbor was, I think.
Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 41.
41.
41,
So then
December.
42 is the next year,
Yeah,
and then
that could have been 42 then.
Was it late in the year?
You know, I don't remember
Don't
that.
remember, okay. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All right, so please continue.
So I had basic training in engineers at Fort Belvoir. And near the end of that basic training, was sent to Georgetown University for a week, given a lot of exams for the Army Specialized Training Program, they called it. And I learned more about that program after I got out than I did while I was there. But anyway, I was accepted for the Army Specialized Training Program. And I guess they put me on a train. I don't remember how I got to New York, but next thing I ended up in a housing development that was a new one, built right near the Navy Yard in Brooklyn, New York. And along with other fellers, we were marching to Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute, and I was taking classes in engineering at Brooklyn Poly. We marched to school, marched back. That went on for 2 semesters. And I swear every class that I took the first semester I already had at UK. And as I remember, I got to transfer 8 credit hours from Brooklyn Poly to UK, so I wouldn't have to take those courses over again when I got back to school.
Were you learning anything specific to the military?
Not then.
Okay.
Except our marching and things like that.
Right. But
no, not the education part. I did get my picture taken there by the New York Times. So Ben showing me working at a lathe, a farm boy from Kentucky. And it was published in the Long Island edition of the New York Times.
oh, cool.
And somewhere or another, I probably still got a picture, a copy of that thing. So, a farm boy from Kentucky going to Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute. After, I don't know, it was about 2 semesters. Well, while we were at Brooklyn Poly, the Pepsi-Cola company had what they call a Pepsi-Cola Center at Times Square. And it's right at the area where the ball drops still today, I think, for New Year's. Servicemen are welcome there with a 2-story building with a basement. And you could go there and get all free Pepsi you want to drink. And
Were they twice as big as the Cokes?
yeah, they were still twice as big as the Cokes. In fact, I guess they were just probably fountain drinks those days at that place. But my buddy at that time was Joe Parisi. They called him Little Joe because he was I was 6 feet tall and he was probably 5.5 or something like that. But Little Joe and I would go to the Pepsi-Cola Center on the weekend when we weren't in class. And Little Joe and I were heading toward the Pepsi-Cola Center, and 3 girls picked us up.
This is a good story.
She saw your picture in the New York Times.
Right? Sylvia.
Well, I don't know what that was, which came first.
Okay.
That the 3 girls picked us up. Pretty soon we had a 3rd soldier been picked up along the way. And so the 3 of us, guys and girls, heading toward the Pepsi-Cola Center. The girls were carrying ice skates. I remember with them, they'd been in Central Park ice skating. And Sylvia Mercier invited the 3 of us to her home.
And that was history.
That was history.
She lived in Brooklyn or where?
In Bronx.
In the Bronx.
One night, 119th Street, in the Bronx. That was history. Well, Little Joe and I were to meet the 3rd guy in Times Square on the next day on Sunday. We waited an hour and he didn't show up, so we went on up to the Mercier house and they fed us a meal anyway, so even though we were late. And I don't know, I started courting Sylvia after that. There wasn't much knew about any of that. So Sylvia's father had been born on Malta, was French descent. Her mother was born in Brighton, England, and spoke with a very British accent. And of course, Sylvia's father I couldn't understand at all when I first met him. He had his French accent. I learned to understand him. And I don't know how long that went on before they put me on the train and sent me down to Louisiana. The 75th Infantry Division was on maneuvers in the Texas and Louisiana swamp area. And I was assigned to Company G 290th Infantry, and after just a short time there, we were put on a train and brought to Kentucky, to Camp Breckenridge. And while we were at Camp Breckenridge, I guess Frank Decider became my best buddy then. He was a sergeant, I was still a private first class. And Perry Froman, my cousin Perry Froman, was stationed at Camp Breckenridge at the same time. And Perry, at least 10 years older than me, had an automobile, and he had access to a Jeep. He came rolling up in the Jeep one day with a driver and said that he was going to be getting a leave, coming back to the farm on a weekend. And so I asked him if we could bring Frank with us. So we rode back to the farm, and then Perry went to his farm.
And he was your cousin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you say it?
Perry Furman.
Yeah. What was he? Your
First cousin.
cousin.
No, he says S.
My Aunt Dixie's
I'm teasing about how Mom used to say cousin.
cousin.
Cousin. Go ahead. But it's so y'all came home for leave.
My Aunt Dixie's only child.
Mm-hmm.
And so Frank was Roman Catholic, and that was before Vatican II. Catholics didn't dare step in a Protestant church, and so I took Frank to the Catholic Church in Warsaw, and that may have been the last church building he was in for him. He was one of the first ones killed that I was with. But anyway, we got back to where we were supposed to be at Camp Breckenridge, and very shortly we were put on a train and sent to some place they said was in New Jersey to get on a ship, and landed in Wales. I think it was Porthcawl. I don't know for sure now. But anyway, we were stationed there for a short time, and I got to leave one Saturday, I guess it was, and I decided I wanted to see what the universities were like there, so I got on a train, went to Cardiff, and spent my time off walking through the university campus there. And then not long after that, the whole unit, or most everybody, was put on a train and sent for Thanksgiving in London. Each person was we were all males at the time, of course. Each person was issued a condom, and the first time I ever had a condom was government issue, getting on that train to go to London. And we stayed there. They took us into what I assumed was a YMCA or something like that, because we were housed for Thanksgiving weekend and had food and
This would have been 43 or 43? Thanksgiving?
most likely,
I think so, that's
Yeah.
where I would think.
most likely 43.
Okay.
Oh. I didn't use the condom, just to be
Here's a postscript.
but I was interested in the historical part of London, and of course I asked somebody, you know, we played London Bridge when I was a kid. I don't know where London Bridge was. He said, "Isn't it a London Bridge? There's 3 bridges across the London River here," or something like that. But anyway, the first V-2 rocket that I heard was landed in Great Britain in London at that trip. You heard just, we didn't hear anything but an explosion. I heard V-2s 2 or 3 times after that where we'd hear the put, 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 and it would cut off and then followed by an explosion. And it's just remarkable how the Germans had all that figured out about wind and temperature and just exactly how much fuel they had to have and all they get to get them to land where they're close to where they wanted to.
So what was the put noise?
As it was running out of fuel.
That was the engine, the fuel.
I see.
It was sounded like just a one-cylinder engine or something like that, which was
Kind of like these drones. Okay.
yeah.
And they're firing these from the other side of the channel? Okay.
Yeah, they were probably from France.
Probably from France, I think so.
France.
Probably from France.
So we're talking 100 miles?
A little more than that, I think.
Okay.
I don't know exactly, because London is a little up. But
That is amazing. Okay.
But anyway, they heard at least one of those go off while we were on that trip. And then soon after that, we were taken down to somewhere on the English Channel and put on small boats and taken over to the French soil. And we were told, just really as we landed in France, that our orders had been changed from what they had expected us to be doing. That the Germans had this breakthrough up in Belgium, and
So this was
whatever it turned out.
1944.
It turned out to be Christmas time, more or less in 44, I guess it was. Belgian bullets broke loose.
And what was the name, the number of your unit? And
Company G, 290th Regiment. Company G, 290th Regiment, 75th Infantry Division.
Thank you.
So we were, after we got straightened out in France, they put us on what they call the 40 and 8s. They were old rail cars that were built for World War I to hold 40 soldiers and 8 horses. And so we riding the 40s and 8s, and at least once on that trip the train stopped, and in just a few minutes you heard the pop 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 and an explosion, and they'd gotten the word somehow or another that the B-2, the buzz bomb was coming, and stopped the train. We sat there for a little bit and then moved on. Then when we get out at the other end of the line where we were, we did you know, I was just a PFC, and they didn't tell us anything about where we were going or what we were doing or anything. But we ended up on Christmas Eve setting up a camp right near the front lines. And the next day we were told to leave all our personal belongings in a pile of stuff. And we did all that and took our ammunition and went on to the front line. We get up to it's at least our front line. We were on the one hillside of a valley. There was a valley that they told us was mine. Not, stay off of that. On the other side of the hill, there was a valley, and go up a hill. There's a German tank sitting up there, and we'd come in on this side, on top of the hill, and dug in, facing that tank. There were a few German soldiers laying around, frozen to death. We just gotten in there, and a loudspeaker from that tank said, "Welcome, we know you're here." And they started reading off our names, including mine.
They found all the personal belongings.
Wow.
I don't know where they got their...
Did they find your personal belongings you left
I
back?
have no idea where they got that stuff, but it seemed to me like they were just reading off a roster from the headquarters or something.
Oh, I bet
like
that was frightening.
Well, I don't remember being frightened of it.
No,
This nice, pretty female voice speaking to you, welcoming you there. We know who you are. And I hadn't been up there very long, and I decided I'd better go back and check at the command post. And so, I'm a foxhole. We'd been digging in this dirt frozen 18 inches thick. Anyway, and some dead Germans laying around. About the time I get up top of the hill, here comes a shell heading at me. That German had a big gun on his tank, aiming at me, going across the top of that hill. And of course he missed, and the shell went off, and I started running, and another shell came up, and it was behind me too. And I stayed ahead of that, and I turned around and went back to my foxhole after that one. We had one boy that named Kaplan that lost an eye about that time. Something hit him in the eye and put it out. The next morning after all this went on, the machine gun squad, our machine gun squad that was really just behind me and a little bit farther up the hillside, were all dead. And I really don't remember. Probably don't know what killed him. I don't know.
Were you freezing to death?
It was cold.
Yep.
It was really cold.
One quick question. You're the 295th Infantry. So did the engineering training, you weren't with a group of engineers, you were part of that infantry division.
That's right.
So they weren't...
No, it took me back in the STP, I was never in the engineers again.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, what was it? And you're in Belgium here now, right? Where we're talking.
I think it was Belgium, but I don't think I guarantee you that's where we were.
You're not sure, okay.
I do know that they told us we were under British command.
Okay.
And my later interpretation of all this was that they had really sent us to France with the idea that the fighting was over in France and that we would just be administering the cleanup and all that stuff. And that's really what the ASTP was all about, was to keep the college kids out of the firing range. And
Right.
and somebody that would hopefully have enough sense to help with the government rebuilding. But anyway, we, you know, I think that was near Dortmund, Germany, but I'm not real sure of that. When the next really place that we seem to be sent to, we find ourselves in Germany, I think. And we were along a river. I don't know which river. And
It's either the Earth, Ourthe, and then advance to the Aisne, Aisne. You were in Belgium.
okay, it could have been.
There's a photograph of the 290th Regiment,
Oh,
Belgium.
well. See, I did.
Yeah.
You know more about that than I do.
I'm just on the internet. I'm not, no.
Yeah.
See?
They relieved the 82nd Airborne, Bob.
Oh, really?
Only.
Well, I couldn't have told you anything about that.
Because you were a private, but now it's kind of general history now.
Yeah. But anyway, we were,
So you were at the first place for one day, one night, overnight, And then-
no, it was several days I think we spent there all
There.
whole.
and then you got back on a train and went
I
further?
don't remember any transportation at all, trucks or trains or anything but walking.
Okay. And then
But
you,
we ended up, I know, on the riverbank. We, for some reason or other, the decision was made that we would go down to the river to prevent Germans from coming across during the night. And then we'd pull back from the river during the day because daylight they wouldn't be coming across anyway. But that was, it turned out to be a fallacy. And we were all spread out, you know, and each squad took its own route down to the river. And I guess we dug foxholes when we first got there. I can't remember digging them, but it seemed I know where we had foxholes. And the group I was with marched down. Well, back up a little bit. A fellow named Joe Nash, one of our guys, had spent several days in the hospital, and he'd had gotten out of the hospital in the morning, and so he was with us as we went down to the river this particular time. And we dropped off, come down here, and dropped guys off at their foxholes, and we get to the last guy, which was usually the sergeant or somebody in charge, and then another group came down the other way, and the last guy on the, well, anyway, the sergeant would go check with the next group over and see if they got down all right over there. And a day or two before this happened, Frank had gotten a German soldier and had taken his weapon. It was a small automatic, or I don't remember what it looked like anymore.
like a Luger?
Well,
Smaller, maybe.
we talked about Lugers, but I don't think the Germans didn't use Lugers. Lugers was a very inefficient type of pistol.
I thought Dad brought one home from boy. He had some kind of German gun, black, he called it a Luger, but anyway.
We call them all Lugers, but they weren't
Okay.
Lugers.
Okay.
But anyway, I generally went with the I was sort of second man in charge since I was had one stripe. Nobody else had any. I was usually the last line, except for the sergeant and our line part we were covering. And I was usually going with him to make sure the other guys got down all right. And Frank had been demonstrating that pistol to some of us, shooting it out into the water. And this time, since Joe was just back from the hospital, Frank took Joe with him instead of me. And I heard the brrr, you know, and I thought, well, Frank's just showing off that German pistol to Joe. But pretty soon our lieutenant came down and said the guys in our right said that nobody ever from our group ever got it to the fellows on that we were supposed to meet with. And so we found our bodies between the. And I say if there's one instance where Joe had stayed in the hospital another day, it would most likely have been me. So I helped carry Joe's body back from the river for to be picked up with a Jeep, and two other guys carried Frank's body. But we got them away from the river where they could be picked up with a Jeep. And that was our first casualties. And I say Frank's the one that had gone to church with me in Warsaw.
Oh, yeah.
And my mother and his mother are contacted regularly after after he had gone to farm with me, I guess they must have started. So anyway, I became acting sergeant, and I don't remember just how we got across the river. I guess we got across the river. The next thing I really remember was that we were marching along a road, and they'd sent a tech sergeant from the motor pool back to take Frank's place. He was getting paid as a sergeant. And we were just walking along the road, and heard one crack of a rifle, and Smitty dropped dead. And again, if they had to replace me as a sergeant, I'd have been the man leading the group. So Smitty was gone. I was back acting sergeant again. Walking along that road for a piece, and a shell hit up a tree. And that tree broke off and hit Hankin right in his middle, and I'd passed Hankin. The medic was with him, but he didn't live any time. About split him open. We went on a ways, and there were and I don't know whether it was really a town or not, but I know that there was at least one house on the side of the road. We were approaching a railroad that was elevated, so the road actually went underneath that railroad, and we were told that the Germans are on the other side of that railroad. And our lieutenant was with us at the time, and and we weren't getting any fire from the Germans. And I got to thinking later, that made sense from a German point of view. We were setting, we were the lead squad. We were ending up in the house, The lieutenant put me at the front door of the house and put other riflemen at the various windows and at the back of the, I assumed at the back of the house. I learned later that he set up a machine gun squad at the back of the house. Didn't tell me it was a machine gun squad back there. But anyway, and he said, we're just going to lay down a heavy barrage of ammunition and hope the Germans move on out or whatever. And everybody start firing when I yell open fire. So I had my Browning automatic rifle and I'm standing at the front door. And when he said open fire, you know, that Browning automatic was supposed to weigh 22 pounds with a bipod. I didn't have a bipod on it. Much easier to fire lying down and aiming it than supporting the front end of that rifle with a bipod. Anyway, I made the mistake of sticking my leg out of that door. And when he said open fire, I stuck my leg out and I get shot. And I really don't know today whether it was the machine gun squad that I stepped in front between me and the target that was at the back of that building, or whether Germans had been smart enough to say, now that, you know, the Americans that are going to be hunting us got this whole line of railroad built up thing there that to cover. Well, we've just got to cover the windows and the doors in that house, whatever. And if I decided if I was going to be a German, I would have told my boys not to fire, because that would show where my position was. And I'd get one guy to aim at the doorway and others at the windows, one at a time, and have those things covered. So when and tell them when anybody appears, well, you shoot him, you know. That it could have been I was hit by friendly fire, or it could have been I was hit by the German that was all positioned with
So
a
you
very
were-
small area to cover.
You were standing up in the door and your foot?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And the door was open a little bit and,
yeah,
okay.
Do you remember the date?
no. No. I know that I was in the hospital in France when we got word that President Roosevelt had died, so that gives me an approximate date if you know when he died.
April 12th, 1945.
April 12th. Good memory.
How long were you in the hospital, do you know?
I don't know. I know we stayed, you know, in the building where I was hit. The medic was right there, and I don't know what they gave me, but I don't remember much about that. I know that it was there long enough that they brought a Jeep in and put me on a stretcher on the back of the Jeep, and our major was stopped the Jeep driver to ask who he was hauling away, and he wasn't having any trouble in that area. There didn't seem to be any Germans left there. And so then I was in the hospital when we got word President Roosevelt had died.
You think you were in the hospital a month?
Well, altogether, most likely,
Okay.
but not in France. My first ever airplane ride
Okay.
was, they took me from the hospital in France and put me on an airplane and flew me into England.
I was just trying to get an idea
Yeah.
about the time it happened.
And that, when they carried me in on a stretcher into the hospital in England, the sergeant stopped me and and asked if I had any weapons. And I had at that time with me a German pistol of some kind or other that I had. I had two of them that I'd taken off Germans up until that time. And I'd left one of them with one of my buddies. And I had one with me, and the sergeant said, "You can't take that in the hospital, and I'll take it and check it for you." And never heard from it again, of course.
Right.
And I think it may have been in a hospital in France, but it might have been, but anyway, I was flown into England. And I don't remember whether it was in France or in England that a couple of military brass came through passing out Purple Hearts. And they gave me a Purple Heart.
Where were you hit? In the foot?
No, I was hit in the groin.
Oh.
Out of this, there was a fairly good dentation a long time in the inside of this
Okay.
right leg, and the testicle was gone
Okay.
after things cleared up. But when you could identify one testicle left. Anyway, when they got me at the hospital in England, it wasn't very long till they put me on a ship, and I was told that most of the people on that ship were refugees were Jewish refugees coming to the States. And the next thing I know, I'm in Camp Atterbury, Indiana, the hospital there. They gave me a pass to go home, and I hitchhiked to Gent onto the farm. And Aunt Ruth was working with the Red Cross at the time, and she sent a request that my month of the leave would been to extend another month. And I had a sick grandma, and I said, I need to be there when she died and all that bit. So I guess I was home probably 2 months pretty much at that time. So I hitchhiked back to Camp Atterbury, and the unit they had assigned me to when I got to Atterbury was long gone.
By this time, we've had VE Day, right? Yeah. Okay.
I think I was probably home on VE Day.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, they said the outfit was gone, and they just issued me a discharge. So I hitchhiked back to Gent.
Well, and Sylvia?
Well, I was still in contact with her. It wasn't very long ago. I was back in Gent till I got on a train and went to New York. And looked up Sylvia. She was working and Doris was home. So Doris called Sylvia to work. And she came on home.
Doris was in New York too?
Doris, yeah, Sylvia's sister Doris.
Oh,
Different Doris.
Different Doris. Okay, got it.
Not Aunt Doris, but
Got it. Okay.
Sylvia's sister Doris, second girl of the three.
Okay.
So anyway, took the train up to New York. I still had a year and a half, 2 years at UK to finish up. And I loafed, I guess, for at least one chance to go back to school. I went back and finished up. There's some sad tales at that finishing up time too, that it doesn't really talk about me, but I can tell you that just to keep you interested.
Okay.
One of the classes were very small when I got back to UK. There weren't a lot of people on campus. So I made Vernon Abbott from Dawson Spring, Kentucky. Became my buddy at the UK this time. I had gotten, when I came home, my brother Billy decided to go in, so he enlisted and went off, and he sold me his old automobile. And so I had some wheels at UK at that time. And Hugh Abbott had a girlfriend that said he was going to do some work on her bicycle. He didn't have no way to get there. So I met Alice by taking John to her home to fix her bicycle. Alice was a medical student. Her daddy was a doctor in Lexington and an uncle a doctor in Frankfurt. And they were fairly well healed, I guess. But anyway, after I started, I guess, anyway, we graduated. Anyway, that's how I met John to start off with. He came back to farm with me one weekend to visit. We became fishing buddies later on. But John and Alice got married. John is the one that suggested to me that I consider the patent office as a place to work. So I took the patent office exam, and they accepted me, and John, talking with John, why he said nearly all the new people at the patent office went to law school at night, and that sounded good too. So Sylvia and I were married by then, and we went to New York City at least a week ahead of time for me to report to work. Not New York, Washington, D.C. And we found an apartment that was just a few doors on the same block that John and Alice were living in at the time. John and Alice were on the third floor, and the people on the second floor, I don't remember their name anymore, but he was a psychiatrist. It'll mean something to you.
Yep, early, yeah.
And then on the first floor was a Major Cecil Vernon Broadway, and his wife, we called her Sis. I forgot she was from Mississippi. He was from Texas. But they became good buddies. But anyway, I got working to law school, went to work for the patent office, patent and trademark office, and it was in the Department of Commerce building. Since I was relatively recent Army, I guess is why, I don't know, but I was invited to be a part of the civil defense group of the Department of Commerce. And that group was headed by Bill Armstrong, which was another patent office employee. So I got to be good friends with Bill, and we were divided into three groups. One was the group that handled the evacuations, stairway monitors, directors, people out of the buildings and so forth. That ended up being me, and then another fellow did the first aid, and the third one had radiological monitoring. He had the monitoring devices with him, knew how to work them to check for radiation. And while I had that job, say a supplemental job for the patent office work, the Department of Commerce sent two of us to a symposium, if that's the right word, in Chicago. So, sort of a coincidence there, we were both, I was Albert Gallatin Craig Jr. and he was Albert E. Craig Jr. I don't know what his middle name was. Both of us representing the Department of Commerce at the
Symposium.
at this symposium. And by that time, John Hamby and his wife had, John had finished his law degree and all that bit, and got a job with a law firm in Chicago. His offices were in the Sears Tower. And his wife, they lived in a suburb of Chicago. Got that written down somewhere, what suburb, but anyway, I went up his house and spent the night in his house instead of buying a hotel room at government expense. They just took a train out to his house. And they built out as a special medical building. All this was right within walking distance of the railroad station where they got off the railroad. And he passed, I guess he bought some empty lots right, and bought a house all right close there. And they built Alice a medical building. It was a building that was built up on poles off the ground. You park underneath and took an elevator up to the office building. So we got a view of that. And I spent a night in their house. They had two boys by this time, teenage kids. I guess I don't remember if the symposium was anything much but advertising. People just wanting to sell the government's things. Didn't have to turn in a report or anything about it. We just were there to represent the Department of Commerce. Sometime after that, I got the word that John had been killed. The full story seems to be that he had one of his sons, David, he'd lost it. That he actually took a butcher knife and cut his father's throat. The father came running out of the house with his pajamas still on. There were two schools there that had school kids and mothers and nuns all out in the street where his house was, seeing what was going on. And John just bled to death in no time at all. His father, his son was declared mentally incompetent and spent some time in medical facilities. And really the last I'd heard of him was that the Illinois authorities said that they would not not worry about him, keep any more track of him if they take him out of the state. So his uncle in Frankfurt took him to Frankfurt. And Bill was able to find some information on the internet about the boy. Let's say they declared him incompetent to stand trial, not guilty because of insanity.
So you,
If you find one guy that really influenced my life a lot, it was John, because he's the one that talked me into going to patent office to start with. And
so you went to law school after you got to DC?
yeah, I had enough GI Bill,
Mm-hmm.
and time was running out to use it or lose it. And
So that was in the early 50s?
that's still in the,
Late 40s?
oh, you know, I don't know what year it was I got the degree in law.
What year did you get married?
I don't even know that.
I'm not sure that, but it was, but you all stayed in touch after the war, you were up there, then you came back to UK?
Yeah.
Okay, a long distance relationship, okay. Wow.
Yeah, I went, well, on one visit to see Sylvia before we were married. I went out to see Frank's family,
Right.
and I spent the night in their home. Had to sleep in their bed, in Frank's bed.
Yeah. You have an amazing ability to remember all these names. I mean, it's incredible. I know they're very close friends and
Yeah.
very important people in your life, but it's very impressive that you remember all these names of all these different people in your life.
Well,
So, what happened to the guitar?
when I got down to Louisiana, and they were taking me down there, sent me down there to the PO address, and when they were ready to send me to the field, they told me I couldn't take the guitar with me. And I was later told by somebody else that one of the sergeants down there had been seen selling a guitar.
Same one that got the German pistol.
No,
I know, but
the German pistol was taken away from me in
in
England,
England, right? Okay.
but it was an American soldier that did it.
So, so then you spent your career in Washington. You all lived in Virginia or Washington or area?
Yeah, we lived on First Street Northwest to start off with. Sylvia got pregnant, and we had a baby that came several months early and didn't make it through the day.
I see.
Born in Sibley Hospital, I think it was, in North Capitol Street. And they said it was born alive, and after it had died, they offered Sylvia's mother and I the opportunity to view the corpse, but neither one of us wanted to get involved with that. So we just told the hospital, it's yours, do what you want to. They asked if they could take it, you know, the body, to see if they could learn anything or something. And we lived on North Capitol Street in Washington, D.C. at that time.
And your whole career was with the patent?
Yeah, I spent
Right.
about 30 years with the Patent and Trademark Office.
Then you all moved back here?
Came back to Kentucky in 1977, as I remember. Decided I want to be fairly close to the university, and I really thought I might take some more courses. They, you know, seniors didn't charge any tuition for us old folks at the time. And so we rented a hotel right close to Calumet Farm motel, and spent a few days looking at houses and so forth, and settled on Versailles, Kentucky. So the house was on Route 60 on the...
I might add that in
Inside.
1977 you were 55. I'm not sure that qualifies as old folks. Okay.
Well, that's
40 years ago.
yeah, 40 years ago.
So then you all lived in Versailles for a long
Something
time.
like 17 years, as I remember. While there, I was, we hadn't been there very long until Sylvia made friends with Arlene Patterson that lived across the side street from our house. And Arlene was involved with the Woodford County Hospital Auxiliary. And she got Sylvia in the auxiliary, and the first thing we know, Sylvia's running the auxiliary, and
I don't doubt that.
and I joined the Woodford County Historical Society, and pretty soon I was president of that. And one of the sad experiences I had there was that I was the only Kentuckian that was
Oh, really?
that was on the Historical Society board. And
I'm sitting here thinking about,
not just Woodford County, only Kentucky.
I'm sitting here thinking about when we started this, you being shy and your mother and afraid to say anything, and then through default you became the leader in these things during the war, and then the Historical Society and all these other things. But I find that interesting how that's all evolved. So
The VFW post in Versailles was very small, and American Legion was pretty large. And I joined I didn't go into that, but with Sylvia's brother-in-law, her sister's husband, Freddie Naylor, I was a charter member of the Veteran Foreign War Post in McLean, Virginia. And I drank a lot of beer in that job. So
I won't ask you until we turn the camera off whatever happened to that condom.
He said he didn't use
you
it.
know,
let
I
that
don't
go.
know what happened to it.
Well,
I really don't.
okay. It went the way of the guitar. So,
I guess.
do you have any more specific questions? Okay.
Covers.
Where was your daughter born?
Arlington, Virginia. I think Sylvia was 4 years old when she was born.
Makes sense.
That's another thing in life that I really don't understand. The assumption was that Sylvia couldn't get pregnant. And she was going to Dr. Nathanson, Esther Nathanson in D.C., all kind of tests and all this other stuff. And it was only years later, I guess it was, that they discovered my sperm count was so low and inactive that
Oh, from your injury,
Well, yeah,
I'm presuming, yeah.
and why in the world that Dr. Nathanson didn't suggest, it may be the old man's fault.
Right.
That Sylvia wanted very much to have a baby, and she got pregnant, actually, and her first child was lost. It just happened that her mother was visiting us at the time from New York, and was with me at the hospital.
Well,
And then Sylvia always was very faithful about visiting the female doctors and getting the proper checks and things made. And her back started hurting her. And we used to tease her about having to stop at every restroom and her pass, things like that. And then went on for a good while before they found out that the cancer was in the urethra. And when they would go to examine her insides for that, they'd really bypass the area where the cancer was before they even started looking.
Yeah.
And that the backaches were caused by the cancer spreading into her spine. And why they didn't jump on that earlier, I don't know.
It's not a common cancer though, is it?
No,
I don't
apparently
think
not.
so. I don't
That's what
think.
they went to.
Of the urethra?
Is it? I'm asking.
No, she had it of the vagina.
Okay. And she,
Apparently we're very,
I've never heard of anyone having it.
and she died when?
06, 06, 09, was it? No, I don't know. 06,
2006?
No.
06, 06, July, or June the 6th, 03, I believe it was.
Okay.
Yeah. 06, 06, 03.
I see. Remember by the numbers, yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else in particular? We've been here a long time. I imagine you're tired. Is there anything else?
No, it's, I guess it's good to remember.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was
I've been thinking about it
fascinating.
over the
Yes,
years.
they really,
It was fascinating.
such a gift for people to, you know. I mean, my father was in the war and he didn't, my mom knows a lot of his history. He didn't talk a lot about it. And
Yeah, my dad,
all the research I've been doing in the last 10, 15 years is, it's been since he's been gone. So it's a shame that we didn't force him to at least write it down or something.
it was very meaningful to me to hear you actually talk about your friends there in the war and dying and carrying them off the field. And I just can't imagine what were you, a 22 or 3-year-old boy, what,
Well,
I just can't fathom any of it. But it was amazing to hear you say it and feel it.
I think, you know, if there's any time, I've said to people this many times, that my most fervent prayer was that I wouldn't be put in a position where I knew I was killing somebody. And when I was when Joe was carrying Joe's body back, that all disappeared. I was,
Angry.
I guess it was anger. But I don't think I would have hesitated a moment to have killed the person that killed my buddies.
Certainly understand that.
And that's, and
Mother, I remember Mom telling me she went to Fort Thomas to be
Inducted.
Inducted is the word I think they use.
yeah.
But she was there too at Fort Thomas. So
Well, I don't know where your mom went, or where Maybelle went. I mean,
I don't know where the Navy was.
I don't know. She was Navy. But
Yeah, she was.
she
She
was
was
in
in
the
the
waves
waves.
and Mom was in the wax.
In the
Well, can I
Civil
get
Corps.
you a beer?
Well, the beers are in there still.
Oh, Al, he told me he had a 6-pack here, and that was a month ago, and now he said, I have a 6-pack, and I said, different one. He said, no, same one. I'm not sure I believe it.
Well, you look in there and you'll find them.
All right, well, would you